God bless you all. Democracy. Thank you.
Oh, how I missed that elderly man pretending to be president. Hello, everyone. I'm Dave Rubin. This is the Rubin Report. It's September 2nd, 2022, and I'm back in business, baby. So, Larry Elder brings me back on the grid. I hear about this Mar-a-Lago raid, which sounds like just another extension of the general Trump derangement lunacy of this administration and the entire deep state and the FBI. Okay, fine. Hear about a few other things that happened over the month, but sort of, in my estimation, actually nothing sort of crazy happened. You know, everyone was saying to me yesterday, oh, you missed so much crazy stuff. And it was like, a lot of it just felt like, no, just kind of the continuation of the sort of slow descent, as I always describe it, the slow descent into lunacy that we're all in. There was a clip that apparently went viral about 2 weeks ago. This is Sam Harris on the Trigonometry podcast, which I've done the Trigonometry podcast. I consider those guys friends. They're doing some good stuff over there. It's a British podcast, and they do a lot of similar stuff that we do here. Anyway, Sam went on to defend censorship and getting Trump off Twitter and why we shouldn't care about Hunter Biden's laptop and a whole bunch of other stuff. So this is Sam a couple weeks ago.
Listen, I don't care what's in Hunter Biden's. I mean, Hunter Biden, at that point, Hunter Biden literally could have had the corpses of children in his basement. I would not have cared, right? It's like, there's nothing. First of all, it's Hunter Biden, right? It's not Joe Biden. But even if whatever scope of Joe Biden's corruption is, like if we could just go down that rabbit hole endlessly and understand that he's getting kickbacks from Hunter Biden's deals in Ukraine or wherever else, right, or China, it is infinitesimal compared to the corruption we know Trump is involved in. It's like a firefly to the sun, right? I mean, like there's just it doesn't even stack up against Trump University, right? Trump University as a story is worse than anything that could be in Hunter Biden's laptop, in my view, right? Now, that doesn't answer the people who say it's still completely unfair to not have looked at the laptop in a timely way and to have shut down the New York Post's Twitter account. Like that's a left-wing conspiracy to deny the presidency to Donald Trump. Absolutely it was, absolutely, right? But I think it was warranted. Right, and again, it's a coin toss as to whether or not
Sam, I'm sorry.
That particular piece.
I'm really sorry. I was the one that said we should move on, but you've just said something I really struggle with there, which is
the kids in the basement.
Fuck the kids in the basement. I'm interested in democracy. You're saying you are content with a left-wing conspiracy to prevent somebody being democratically re-elected as president.
Well, no, I'm content. Well, but the thing is, it's just not left-wing, right? So Liz Cheney is not left-wing. Right, Liz Cheney is doing everything in her power.
You're content with a conspiracy to prevent somebody being democratically elected.
But there's nothing conspiracy. It's not. It was a conspiracy out in the open. But it doesn't matter if it was. It doesn't matter what part's conspiracy, what part's out in the open.
Okay, so there is a lot to unpack there, as Sam would say. So first off, I want to just say something. Sam and I were friends for many years. I'm not really sure if we're friends anymore, to be quite honest with you, and it doesn't really matter, and I'm not going to attack him personally here. I'm just simply not going to do that. 7 years ago this week, in 2015, I think this was on September 12th, 2015, we launched the Rubin Report as this show, and as an interview show at first, and then ultimately what became this. Sam was my first guest. So he's been an integral part in, I would say, my own political evolution, as many of you know, and I wrote about it, Don't Burn This Book. You know, Sam on Real Time with Bill Maher when he got into that fight with Ben Affleck, as Sam was calmly talking about the difference between criticizing ideas. In this case, he was talking about ideas about religion versus being bigoted towards people. It was a major wake-up moment for me. It was a major wake-up for millions and millions of other people. But our political paths have diverged. Now, I always go out of my way to not let politics affect friendship. A lot of other people have trouble with that. I find, generally speaking, liberals, leftists, whatever, have trouble separating politics and people. I find conservatives, generally speaking, and certainly libertarians, are willing to accept that, oh, people have different feelings about you, and oh, you might have voted this way and I might have voted this way, and you believe abortion should be this and I believe abortion should be that, and this about the death penalty. Where liberals, generally speaking, again, seem to have this thing that if you don't fully agree with us, we kind of can't be friends with you. So Sam and his wife have been to my house for dinner, our house to dinner, for many, many times. I've done events with him, all sorts of stuff. About 6 or 8 months ago, I had sent out a tweet saying to a bunch of my liberal friends, and I was talking about Sam Harris and Barry Weiss and Jonathan Haidt, people who have been on the show. I said, hey, maybe now you guys are realizing that you were a little bit off on Trump. I'd love to continue that conversation. And Sam just unfollowed me on Twitter. So I don't mean to make this about me, except there is something bigger here, because what you just saw right there, Sam talking there, became a sort of culturally important moment. So let's, as Sam would say, unpack a little bit of what he said. First off, in essence, he's okay with censorship if the censorship accomplishes what he wants it to accomplish. This is really, really dangerous, because basically anyone in power might want to censor people so that they could stay in power. And if you're saying it's okay to get what you want, then anyone else can say it's okay to get what they want. Also, he seems to be completely dismissive of what happened with the Hunter Biden laptop, and whether what was on the laptop, whether it had to do with Hunter Biden's business dealings in Ukraine, China, et cetera, and that the fact that he was obviously hired to do things that he was not qualified for because it was the access to the vice president at the time, now the president, Joe Biden. There's all sorts of things on that laptop, whether they were pictures of him smoking crack or with the prostitutes, or whether it was deep business related stuff in emails, that you could then blackmail Joe Biden for it. So to completely dismiss it as if it doesn't matter, or that Trump has just automatically done something worse, is really bizarre. I mean, and this is what Trump derangement syndrome is. It takes relatively clear thinking people, and it makes everything that happens in the world can be excused because Donald Trump is worse. So you can actually do anything. You can say I'm for free speech and I'm against censorship, but you can censor if it's going to stop evil Donald Trump. And then he talks about Trump University. I'm not going to defend Trump University. I don't really care about Trump University. Trump had Trump vodka, that failed. Trump had casinos that failed, all sorts of stuff. He's a businessman who does things that sometimes succeed and sometimes fail. I'm not even pretending that he's the most moral person in the world or doesn't do some corrupt things, or he's a New York City builder. You got to do some freaking corrupt things, obviously. And also, he's a politician now, and politicians, whether they are Republicans or Democrats or anything else, have to do corrupt things, dishonest things, all of that. But the broader point is the idea of censoring when you think it's okay. And that is really, really dangerous. So I can see clearly why 2 weeks ago or so that really caught the internet on fire, because Sam was thought of, I think in many ways, he's in that sort of Bill Maher group as like sort of one of these like last liberals who's not completely insane. I would say he's one of the people that I would like to kind of move a little bit and go, hey, if you're against the woke stuff and the gender stuff and, all that, well, then you got to kind of come around and realize what time it is, right? But okay, he hasn't quite got there. He did then, after some of the brouhaha, he did do on his podcast, I guess, a bit of a clarification of his remarks, although I think it sort of just dug the thing even deeper.
I've said on several occasions that I think Donald Trump is a worse person than Osama bin Laden. Now, the statement is obviously meant to get your attention. I get that it's surprising, but it's not meant to be hyperbolic. I can defend every word of a statement like that. What I can't defend are people's misunderstandings and erroneous extrapolations of a statement like that.
Okay, so look, I don't know that people, from what I've seen or the way I'm analyzing it right now, are misunderstanding what he said. I also find generally, like, listening to podcasters who talk in that slow NPR voice, it's very, very hard to listen to. Anyway, I think this is all interesting. Again, not to attack Sam. I think he's mistaken on this thing. Whether we ever break bread again or not is actually irrelevant. But I think he's sort of, this is what's happening. It's sort of similar to the Jon Stewart video that went viral a couple weeks ago. These sort of half non-woke liberals are realizing that none of their policies work, none of it makes sense, and that all you have is to fight against this imaginary Trump thing, because it's not even the real Trump thing, right? Like, Trump, things were a lot better when Trump was president. It's very simple. It's very obvious. Like, we all can kind of see that. So what I wanted to do here was show you a little bit of how 7 years ago, this very week in 2015, Sam was my first guest. And then you guys know the story when it comes to me, right? I decided to start really seeing where the truth was, seeing what was honest about public policy, that I had been wrong about some things and a bunch more. And then shortly, right after that, I did that Why I Left the Left video, something that perhaps Sam should take a look at.
Do you believe in free speech? Do you believe that people should be judged by their character, not their skin color? Do you believe in freedom of religion? If you believe these things, you're probably not a progressive. You might think you're a progressive. I used to think I was. My show, The Rubin Report, was originally part of the Progressive Young Turks network. Progressives struck me as liberals, but louder. Progressives were the nice guys. They looked out for the little guy. They cared about women and minorities. They embraced change. In short, who wouldn't want to be a progressive? I'm a classical liberal, a free thinker. And as much as I don't like to admit it, defending my liberal values has suddenly become a conservative position. So if you think people should be able to say what they think without being punished for it, that people should be judged by their behavior, not their skin color, and that people should be able to live the way that they want to live without government interference, then there's not much left on the left for you.
Okay, so I think actually Sam does understand a lot of the concepts there, obviously. I think he's a little confused as to whether he thinks people should be able to say what they want to say, because he did applaud when Jack Dorsey on Twitter booted Donald Trump. We'll get to more on that in just a second. But the reason that I thought this was all interesting for my first show back is because, as I said, 7 years ago there we were sitting, I was having a wake up, he was sort of in the center of the thing. And then there was that whole intellectual dark web thing that blew up that many of you were following, and there was me and Peterson and Joe Rogan and Sam Harris, obviously, and Majid Nawaz and a whole bunch of other people. But it's sort of crumbled. I don't even know what it was. We didn't have laminated cards. We didn't have a secret hideout or anything like that. But there was this group of people that were trying to bring some level of sanity, I think, to political discourse. And now we've seen, some level of sanity in political discourse completely devolve. But some of us, I think, have started to go to where reality is. That we didn't say, we will only define reality by what Donald Trump does, and that he is this, this orange Hitler, and we must make all our decisions based on what he does or does not do. I would say Jordan Peterson has done a great job of that, an absolutely great job of that. You may remember this tweet from Jordan back in March of 22. He said, I wasn't a conservative until liberals kowtowed to the radicals. Now, this is a great point by Jordan, that there are virtually no liberals left. There are a couple liberals who are voting for the people who bring in the bad stuff, and they don't get there. So the question I guess I would pose to Sam is, why do you consider yourself a liberal anymore? Or is defending free speech not a liberal policy position that you hold to anymore? Now, what's also interesting about this, there was another clip that went viral last week that I'm just catching up on. Aaron Rodgers, quarterback in the NFL for the Packers, he went on Joe Rogan's podcast and they started talking politics. And Aaron Rodgers has been very outspoken against COVID vaccines and a whole bunch more. And Rogan seems to be getting to the end of the road.
No one who is alive today had ever experienced a true pandemic. And I'm hoping that now that this is over, people are going to recognize that some serious errors were made and not repeat those. That's the best you can get out of it.
So what do you tell those people?
Vote Republican. That's what a lot of them are going to do anyway.
Yeah.
Congrats, Joe. Can we send Joe like some flowers or chocolate? He seems like a flowers and chocolate guy. Like he's getting there. He has already said that he would vote for DeSantis if DeSantis was to run for president. Now, I don't know that DeSantis is going to, but I suspect that Rogan would support Trump this time if that is how it goes, or he probably will support whoever the Republican is. But Joe, you have to remember, this is a guy who 4 years ago was a Bernie Sanders supporter. So now there's the road, and you're starting to realize that some of your stuff is wrong and it doesn't make sense. And if you're Joe Rogan, you're a Bernie Sanders guy, right? So now you're for high taxes, you're for all these government programs, and if just these people had the power, they could do more properly and all that stuff. So the rubber met the road with Joe Rogan. He left California and he went to Texas. And now in the roughly year and a half or so that he's been in Texas, he is now talking about voting for Ron DeSantis to be president of the United States. He is telling people to vote for Republicans. This is not a traditional Republican or conservative. I am fairly certain that was the smoke of marijuana that was coming up during that interview there. He smokes weed, he does ayahuasca, he eats mushrooms, he's into the MMA stuff. This is not the typical stodgy, old school conservative that we think of, but that's been the new alignment that I've been trying to show you guys for a long time. So whether Joe Rogan and I agree on everything or disagree on everything or whatever, or whether he is exactly where I'm at or not, I think it's reflective of a lot of Americans who are realizing that the big tech stuff, the censorship stuff, the Trump derangement stuff, the obsession, the January 6th hearings, this has all been endless nonsense. The Mar-a-Lago stuff, it's all endless nonsense, and we have to do better. It doesn't mean Republicans are great, but they're a little bit better than the Democrats. So why are a whole bunch of us sort of now on the scary right? So why is it that a guy like Joe Rogan is getting to the end of the road and telling people to vote for Republican, even though if you were to just check all the boxes, this guy is not a generic Republican? And Joe Rogan, whether you think he's a silly MMA guy or not, or whether you like weed or psychedelics or not, he has hundreds of millions of people that listen to him every month. He is by far the most influential public figure in America right now, by far. It's not even close in terms of the amount of content he puts out and the amount of people who are listening to his thoughts. And he's now, again, going from, in essence, supporting the socialist to now realizing that you have to defend freedom. So why is this happening to him? Well, it's not just that I think he's having a wake up and realizing, hey, I don't like paying those taxes, and they're the ones that locked us down and a whole bunch more. It's also that the Democrats' rhetoric, and Biden, Joe Biden specifically, the rhetoric has gone completely insane. So Joe Biden gave this speech last night, and if you have not seen any of the video or the images of this, it's dystopian. It's right out of Star Wars Palpatine. It's right out of Germany, 1937. The optics of this thing are absolutely horrible. Biden, again, he's just reading. He doesn't know what he's saying. He can't regulate his emotions, all of that stuff. Well, we got two clips for you here, and just watch the juxtaposition of what Biden does here. First, we should be united.
I believe America is at an inflection point. One of those moments that determine the shape of everything that's to come after. And now, America must choose to move forward or to move backwards, to build a future or obsess about the past, to be a nation of hope and unity and optimism, or a nation of fear, division, and of darkness.
All right, so he seems kind of angry while he's telling us about unity and all that good, flowery stuff. Then moments later, he did this.
Too much of what's happening in our country today is not normal. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
So it's just so extraordinary what he does. And again, it's not coming from him. So it's whoever the speechwriter is, and it's whoever's in charge of the entire event, We're going to make him look evil. We're going to have the two soldiers behind him and the red. And it all just looked Nazi-ish and evil. And it's by design, guys. It really is by design. No, it's by design. I get that these people are incompetent, but they're not that incompetent. They know what they're doing. So in this speech, first he's telling us about hope, and we have to be less divisive, and we have to look forward, not backward. Okay, always twirling. That's a Simpsons reference for some of you. And these aren't mistakes. This is by design. That is in a speech by design, to purposely confuse and conflate everybody and sort of make it sound like he wants unity while he's also throwing half the country under the bus. And this is not the first time that he's done this. This, I think, was from about a week ago. Again, I'm getting caught up on all of this stuff. When he defended himself after calling MAGA Republicans semi-fascist.
What do you mean by semi-fascism, sir?
In December, you will...
You know what I mean.
Well, I'm not going to tee up any further than to say, does this sound like true freedom to you or mob rule?
Again, we see majority of Americans who disagree. And so when you are not with where majority of Americans are, then, you know, that is extreme. That is an extreme way of thinking.
I mean, if she believes that, there's so much history that this woman needs to learn, but that is what these people think. If most people believe something is right and true, then it must be right and true. And if you do not, you are the radical. You are the extremist. I mean, that is mob rule on steroids. That is how all of the awful movements of history, that is how pogroms and holocausts and all sorts of horrible things happen. A majority starts getting drunk on power, starts following a bad leader, and then is willing to do all sorts of bad things to the minority. You could have a group of 20 people, and just because 19 people say that 2 + 2 = 5, it doesn't mean that the one guy who says 2 + 2 is 4 is the extremist. I mean, this is just absolutely extraordinary. But again, it fits. Doesn't this all sort of fit like a puzzle into everything that's been going on here for quite some time? So what does this all kind of lead us to? Because now we are in the fall. It is September, and that means we are basically 2 months away from these midterm elections. And yes, it does, at least at the moment, look like there's going to be this massive red wave. And that's partly why Biden is using the scary imagery and this MAGA Republican, and it's partly why he's doing that, because all they've got is they need people to be fearful, whether it's fearful of the MAGA extremists or whether it's fearful of COVID or monkeypox or something else. All they have left is that you will need us because you will be afraid, okay? We're also about 9 months away from the Republican primary season now, so a bunch of Republicans are going to get in on the presidential stage, and we'll see how that thing fights out, and I hope that it's a robust fight.